أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا Muhammad وآله الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of the Dictations. This episode, I want to talk about something very different, almost very personal, and that is the type of books that shaped my perception while I was studying in the Hawza. There are many things that can shape a person's perceptions and understandings about life, what it means, how to live, one's life in this world, how to conduct themselves, and so on and so forth. And there are many contributing factors that can play a role over there. Oftentimes the media, the way you're brought up, the kind of school you go to, the kind of things you're exposed to on the media, on social media nowadays, and of course, the type of literature and the books that somebody reads. Now, as somebody who was in the Hawza, one of the main things that we are exposed to, one of the main sources of knowledge that we are exposed to is books. And there will come a time in the life of a Hawza student that there will be, they will read a book, a certain book, or perhaps a number of books that are really, that's really gonna essentially change the way they look at things. And in this specific episode of the Dictations, I want to kind of share at least one of these books. There are a couple of books that I would say that really, really changed my perception and understanding of life, and how to kind of understand and reconcile a lot of the the dilemmas that a average Muslim in the modern era kind of has to deal with, and try to navigate my way in today's world. There are obviously a couple of key books that did that for me, and inshallah I will share in the subsequent episodes, either here on the Dictations or for members only, because some of the later books are perhaps a little bit more advanced than the book I'm going to talk about today. But there are certain books that really basically changed the way I made certain decisions, changed the way I understood Islam and Islamic scholarship, Hawza and life and everything. But before I say that, I want to make a point here that reading, unfortunately, as a whole, reading as a fi'l, as an act. I've been working with elementary schools over the last couple of years, and it's very clear that there is a reading crisis, an epidemic, in our communities. People just don't read anymore, and I think the reason for that is very obvious, and that is the rise of social media, the rise of digital technologies, and that have become a distraction, or they have turned rigorous scholarship and understanding of things into bite-sized videos, 1-minute reels. Even with my channel over here, there's many people who are always requesting and demanding, please make the videos shorter, please make them under 2 minutes and 1 minute. And my response is always, have you seen what I'm talking about? Like, how can I turn the content that I'm delivering into a minute or two? Unless it's a very specific point, akhlaqi point or something I'm trying to make. But most of what I'm speaking about, and most of what let's say scholars and ulama talk about, you cannot put it down in a minute, right? And it is true until today. If you want to go into the world of scholarship, if you want to understand the world of scholarship, whether it's Islamic scholarship or any other type of scholarship, Western scholarship, you're gonna have to read. You're gonna have to develop the patience and the skill set to be able to engage with different levels of text. You're gonna have to understand the jargon, and the reality is that it takes time. Okay, it takes time. It can take many years to develop that skill set, right? Reading itself is not not always easy. Comprehension is not always easy. Maybe someone is a very good reader, but their comprehension of the text is not very solid. So that's just something I want to kind of mention off the point, off the bat. And the reason for this specific Dictations episode is not to talk about the benefits of reading and why it's important and why it's kind of necessary for us to build that culture again. We definitely have to build that culture especially in our Western communities over here. This is not an episode about that. I don't even know if we even need an episode about that because it's so obvious. But this episode is more specifically about the kind of books that really shaped and impacted my life. Okay, in the houses, especially when I was in the houses. Now, there are a couple of books, and I don't want to show all of them right now, because I do want to leave some for later episodes. And the point is, I want to summarize the sort of main content or main themes within these books. And the book I want to cover in this specific episode is a very simple book, a very simple but very powerful and essentially life-changing for me, and that is this 4-volume book called Jurayee Az Darya. Okay, it's in Farsi, and it is 4 volumes. These 2 volumes over here, I bought them in 2013. Okay, or rather, the volume 1 I bought in 2013, and volume 2 I probably bought in 2014 or 2015. I don't recall exactly, but there's a whole story behind buying these 2 specific books. And that is when we had first moved to the Hausa, when I first moved to the Hausa in 2012 in Qom, we were just learning Farsi. And obviously one of the best ways to improve your language is to read texts in that language and try to understand what they're saying. So alhamdulillah, I was interested in making sure that my language grasp is developed quickly, whether it's in Arabic or in Persian, Farsi. And one of the ways I was asked to do that is, go and purchase these books. These 2 books had just been published recently at that time. So we went to buy this book. I was with one of my friends and colleagues. Maybe some of you are aware of him, Sayyid Hadi, one of the scholars and students of the house as well. And we were very close friends over there, and we said, hey, let's go purchase these books. And at that time, I was not very familiar with the author of this book, and that is Ayatullah Shubayri Zanjani. I was not so familiar with him. Who is he? And I was told that he is someone who is extremely well versed in the science of Rijal, Ilm al-Rijal, in Hadith sciences, in Hadith studies, in history. And he is somebody that you need to be aware of, and if you want to understand the sort of tradition and whatnot, is somebody that is one of the top-notch scholars and also a marja of our time today. So I said, okay, that sounds good. Now we're finally in a city where these scholars are kind of accessible. They're they're not far from us. You can actually go and visit them and sit in their gatherings and whatnot. And we did that a lot, actually, with specifically with Ayatullah Zanjani. We did that a lot. We used to go to his office to just attend like these open gatherings and so on. And he is somebody who leads the prayers in the Haram of Ma'suma Qum as well, the Maghrib Isha prayers. So anyways, this book came out and we purchased it, but there's an interesting story to it. We didn't have the money to purchase both volumes, because when it first came out, it was whatever the cost was, I don't recall. And it was a bit expensive to purchase both of the volumes together. So me and my colleague Sayyid Hadi, we said that we'll purchase, each of us will purchase 1 volume, and once we're done reading 1 volume, we'll basically trade. And later on, if we get our financial situation gets better, we'll buy the second volume on our own. So that's kind of what we did. We each bought volume 1, and then maybe he bought volume 2, and we started reading it. And I'm gonna explain what is so important about this book. This book, Jurayee Az Darya, can be translated as a drop from the sea. Okay, Jur'e is like a drop. Okay, and Darya is a sea. A drop from the sea or drop from the ocean. And it is a collection of, so the book is divided into 2 parts. Okay, in all 4 volumes, the book is divided into 2 parts. Okay, the first part is actually Ayatullah Zanjani's sort of personal notes that he has written, marginal notes or side notes, or even some of the articles that have never been published before, papers that he has written and analysis that he has written that are very unique and they have never been published. So for example, in volume 1, he has an entire paper, and as a matter of fact, I'm probably gonna have to open it up on the PDF. So this book is available on PDF. In volume 1, so this is the book, Jurayee Az Darya, Jild Awwal. He has a paper that he has written on a book called The Fahrist of Shaykh Muntajibuddin. Okay, and it's a pretty lengthy paper, as you can see. Okay, it goes on and on and on and on and on, and it, it's very long. I have actually translated this entire paper, and the plan, inshallah, is that along with the translation of the actual Shaykh of the Fahrist of Shaykh Muntajibuddin, inshallah, we hope to kind of publish this paper, right? But the actual paper I've already translated it. Okay, I have it. It maybe needs some minor editing, and then the actual Fahrist is also I have translated the entire book, and inshallah, we hope that we can one day publish it soon through one of the publications in one of the well-known publications, essentially. Okay, now that is what the first part of the book is all about. So it has a lot of notes of Ayatullah Zanjani. So for example, there's a book called Tabsiratul Awam, and Ayatullah Zanjani has written a lot of notes on who is the author of this book. Okay, because sometimes you have books that have disputed authors, right? You think that it belongs to this author or it belongs to some other author. So Ayatullah Zanjani has his own analysis on that. Then you have this Fahrist, Shaykh Muntajibuddin. And then, for example, he has an entire paper on, or not, it's not really a paper, maybe it's like, a couple of pages on the author of Qamus al-Rijal, which is Muhakkik Shushtari, Muhakkik Tustari also, they call him. Qamus al-Rijal, his Ayatullah Zanjani's analysis of him. Or for example, an entire paper on Najashi, one of the great Rijal scholars. Okay, so look, he has a lot of interesting discussion. So these are all in far. Then, for example, he has some hashiyas that are also published. Hashiya means that these scholars, when they read certain books, they make side notes on the side, on the margins, right? And some of these hashiyas are so crucial and so important because these scholars have so much precision and what they call diqqat, precision basically, that they make some very interesting observations on these books, on these manuscripts, on what the author has written. So those hashiyas themselves are very, very important. So look, they publish his hashiyas, right? So if I show you, for example, one of them, one of the hashiyas, right? This is on, let's say, page 204. So this is the hashiyah. Okay, so I don't know which book which book is this about? Yeah, so there's a book on Risala on Abu Basir. Okay, there's a Risala on Abu Basir, right? If I'm not mistaken, this might be Muhakkik Shushtari's Risala. Okay, but it doesn't matter. So look at this. So on page 318, he has quoted the actual author who's reading, and then Sayyid Zanjani says, well, this is the reference of what he's saying. Or for example, this is what the author is saying, and this is my these are his points on it. Okay, these are his entire points on it. So these are hashiyas. These are very important for advanced researchers and whatnot. So it's not something that the common person is going to be relevant for them, but for advanced researchers and so on, they're kind of important. Okay, to kind of know what a serious scholar of Rijal or Hadith or Fiqh, Usul is saying about these works. So that's that. And then then this book has an Arabic section. Okay, so same thing. Some of his hashiyas in Arabic. He has an entire discussion on the Sanad of Ziyarat Ashura. Maybe some of you have seen some of these papers that are published in English, kind of explaining and justifying the chain of transmitters of Ziyarat Ashura. A lot of them are actually taking their analysis about one or two of the narrators from this paper. Okay, I don't know if they quote this paper or not, but a lot of them use this paper. Okay, so it's actually from Ayatullah Zanjani's analysis of it, right? So that's what he has. But okay, and by the way, so this happens in every single volume. So the first section is this sort of technical stuff, his hashiyas, his papers, his scholarly comments. But that's not the part that I was reading in 2013. Okay, 'cause I didn't even understand half of this stuff. Okay, at that time, or I wasn't sort of ready to appreciate some of these things at that time. What was important and relevant for us was this second part, or in this book is the third part, but the second section of the book. And that is what I want to talk about right now. If you look at this second section of the book, you're going to start seeing names of scholars, names of ulama. Shaykh Hurul Amili, Sayyid Sadruddin Amili, Shaykh Khidr bin Shallal, Shaykh Hassan Kashif al-Ghita, Shaykh Ansari, Sayyid Ali Shushtari, and so on, all the way down. Okay, Abu Hassan Isfahani, so on. Okay, Ayatullah Burujardi, Bahbahani, Sayyid Khu'i, Ayatullah Khu'i. Okay, Sayyid Ahmad Zanjani, who is Ayatullah Zanjani's own father. Now, if I open volume 2, right, it's the same thing. Okay, volume 2 is the same thing. So you have these initial, hashiyas and whatnot, and then you have the sort of third section of the book where he starts, with the names of ulama. Allama Hilli, Fakhr al-Muhaqqiqeen, Shahid Awal, Muhaqqiq Karaki, who was a great scholar in the Safavid era, Shaykh Bahai, Allama Majlisi, and so on. Now look how long this section is. Okay, if you look at the page numbers, it is going on and on and on, and look, he has one on Shaykh Mutahari, and he has his own comments on Shaykh Mutahari's book that he wrote on hijab. And then Ayatollah Zanjani is mentioning some of his criticisms about some of the things Shaykh Mutahari has written in that book. Sayyid Murtaza Shabistari, and Allama Tabatabai, and all the way, Musa Sadr. Okay, so by the way, just on a side point, Ayatullah Shubayri Zanjani was a colleague and what they call a mubahatha partner, a student, classmate basically, of Imam Musa Sadr, the same Musa Sadr who went to Lebanon, and then when he was supposed to fly to Libya, he disappeared, and we don't know what happened to him. Same Musa Sadr. Okay, so he was used to be a classmate of Musa Sadr, and the house or the office of Ayatollah Zanjani today is actually the old house of Imam Musa Sadr's and his father. So it's their ancestral home that has now become Ayatollah Zanjani's office. It was very interesting. So what about these stories? These stories are essentially what is going to have the impact that I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm talking about the fact that there are certain books that shaped the way I looked at things and changed my perception of things and how I made certain decisions. I'm reading this book early 2013 and through 2014, 2015 until today. Okay, so until today in front of you, I'm reading these four. So the first, it was 2 volumes, and the third volume was published, and then the 4th volume was published. And these books are essentially a collection of stories by Ayatollah Zanjani. Now, just a context about these stories. So every day, pretty much, for many, many, many years, before Maghrib, just a few minutes before Maghrib, like 30 minutes before Maghrib, 40 minutes before Maghrib, Ayatollah Zanjani has a sort of open gathering of him and his students, okay? And they discuss whatever topic that they're discussing. It's an open gathering. Maybe they're continuing a discussion on some topic. Maybe, Ayatollah Zanjani gave a class in the morning on something, so the students want to continue that discussion. It's just an open gathering, right? In that gathering, near the end, or sometimes even in the middle, he will often quote a story. Okay, he will often quote a incident or a story or something. And these stories have been recorded. And also sometimes these stories were said by him while walking from his office to the Haram of Ma'suma Qawm when he goes to lead the Salat. While walking, he would quote some stories and people are listening. And these have been recorded over many years. Okay. And essentially these stories were published into this book. So that's what this book is. This book has a collection of stories, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of hundreds of scholars from the time of Shaykh Saduq and Kulaini until today. Hundreds of scholars, and Sayyid Zanjani has tons of stories about them. Now, the interesting thing, now look, we have other books with stories of ulama as well. Okay, we have some other books as well. But this one is extremely important. And the reason for that is that these stories are being narrated by Ayatullah Zanjani himself. Meaning, he is someone who is very, very careful in transmission. He is extremely careful where he is quoting the stories from. So the way these stories are narrated are almost like a hadith. So in a hadith, you have a chain of transmitters, correct? You say, Shaykh Kulaini heard from this person, who heard from this person, or who heard from this person, who heard from Zurara, who heard from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and Imam Sadiq said this, correct? You have a chain of transmitters. Sayyid Zanjani quotes these ulama stories almost in that manner, most of them. Okay, most of them, not all of them, but most of them. So what that does is that it gives a level of credibility and significance to these stories, as opposed to other books. There are tons of other books written about other scholars. This scholar had this miracle, and this scholar could do this trick and that karamat and this supernatural wonder, which you're just wondering, like, what's the authenticity of these stories and books? A lot of books were written after the ulama passed away, and people just made up their own stories. There was one of the mystics, from the time of Imam Khomeini. His son, I don't want to mention names. So, his son was a teacher of one of my teachers. And one day I was talking to one of my this specific teacher, and he was just telling us, he says, I went to my teacher one day and I showed him this book about his father, who was this mystic at the time of Imam Khomeini. And I asked him, like, this book says that your father could do so many things, interesting karamat, and I don't know, walk over water and all these crazy things. And the son started to laugh. He's like, really? I didn't even know my dad could do all this. So basically, he just started laughing. He's like, no, man, like, these are just made up stories. They're just literally made up. Maybe my father had karamat, but, all of these stories that people have made up, he said, look, people just make up these things and they sell them as books. So look, unfortunately, this happens a lot. And people love these type of stories, right? We love stories, and we love stories that kind of, make us, play with our imagination and whatnot. So Ayatullah Zanjani is a little bit different. Now, this doesn't mean that he doesn't quote any stories about karamat. In fact, he will quote stories that even sometimes you're scratching your head and thinking that, does Ayatullah Zanjani really actually himself believe in this, or what? Sometimes you're wondering, does he believe in this himself or no? But, point is that he's quoting them with a lot of care and a lot of, precision. And sometimes when he's not sure of, who said what, he will mention that. He will say, I heard this story from two people, and I don't know which one of them said this specific line to me. So to that extent, he's very careful in transmission. So look, someone of his level and his expertise, when he's going to quote these stories, it has a lot of importance. So right away, we got these books. And some of the teachers at that time were also recommending this book, because they said that if you want to learn and improve your akhlaq, one of the best ways to do it is by studying the lives of the ulama. Some of you may not know, but there is a principle in usul al-fiqh, which is called siratul mutashari'ah, the practice of the religious people or the religious community. Now, this is a principle that is used in usul, about the religious community that lived at the time of the Ma'sumin. Right? So what the principle says is that, sometimes you don't have a hadith for something. So what do you have? You have instead the practice of the religious community at the time of the Imam. And you realize that the Imam didn't stop these people, or we don't have anything from the Imam about this topic. So for example, imagine we didn't have any narrations about how to do wudu, and you realize that the entire religious community of the Shia at that time, at the time of Imam Sadiq, would wipe their heads instead of washing their heads. right? So they say that this can actually serve as evidence and as a proof that definitely the Imams must have taught him this. Otherwise, why would the entire community do something that is completely wrong, and then also the Imam's not saying anything? So you kind of assume and infer that the Imams must have taught this. So this idea of following the practice of the ulama, it's there. Now, after the era of the Ma'sumin, we don't use this principle after the era of the Ma'sumin. Meaning, if a later group of ulama, after the era of the Ma'sumin, were to do a practice, it doesn't really become evidence for, hadith, for example. But it doesn't negate the significance of the practice of the ulama, of the religious scholars. Okay, it doesn't negate it. Right? It doesn't negate, obviously, the importance of it. Obviously, if ulama are collectively behaving in a certain way and conducting themselves in a certain way, then it does matter to us, because it kind of gives us a glimpse into their psyche, into their mindset. How are they thinking? What type of decisions do they make? What type of things do they prioritize? Or how do they reconcile their own differences of opinions? It is with this mindset that I, began reading this book. Okay, initially, obviously, I read the book, it was a couple of stories. And then slowly, I realized, wow, these stories are pretty, one alim is acting in this way, in this situation, but another scholar in that very similar situation is completely acting a different way. Right? So which one is right, which one is wrong? And then you slowly start to realize that, hey, there are actually different ways of dealing with, similar issues. There are different ways to dealing with this, and there are different affinities, and there are different personalities, right? And that is what essentially had an impact on me, because I began to see the scholars of the Hawza as important figures, but more so important because I started to analyze how and why the scholars were making the decisions that they're making. Why were they prioritizing certain things that maybe we in our lives don't prioritize? What was it that they understood that I haven't understood yet? Right? For example, one story, this story is not specifically in this book of Jurayee Az Darya, so this is a different book. But it's like Imam Khomeini, when he got married, he asked for his wedding ceremony to take place in the month of Ramadan. And everyone was confused. Why do you want to get married in the month of Ramadan? The wedding ceremony. And he said, well, in the month of Ramadan, the Hawza is, ta'til, there's holidays. And I don't want my marriage ceremony to interfere with my studies. Right? Now, it's a very interesting, it's a very simple story. But for me, I was like, wait, that means he really takes those narrations that talk about the importance of knowledge and gaining knowledge and seeking knowledge. He takes it very seriously, and he understands that it is priority over everything else, right? Average person might be like, hey, I want time off from classes because I'm going to go get married. That's what average Hawza student or average person in your life, in day-to-day life, that's what you're going to do. You're going to take time off from your studies, from your classes, from your university, from wherever. You can sacrifice the studies because I need to go get married, and this is my wedding ceremony is taking place. Imam Khomeini is doing the opposite. He's saying, no, postpone my wedding ceremony to a time where I'm actually off, from the Hawza, so my studies do not get impacted. Very simple story, but it gives you an understanding that knowledge and seeking knowledge has priority, has significant priority. Look, so these stories, when I would be reading them, it shaped the way I, behaved in the Hawza, right? I would always try my best to prioritize my studies, make sure classes don't get, I don't skip any classes, I don't miss any classes, I don't, I make sure I take all the opportunities that are available there. Now, I want to quote a couple of these stories. It's 4 volumes, right? So it's a very lengthy book. I cannot quote all of these stories. I've translated very few of them. Initially I would translate them on Iqra Online because I was just trying to practice my Farsi, to be honest. But there are some stories I want to quote very simply, quickly for you guys, just to kind of give you a glimpse into what is available here, right? So here, this is the story. This is a chapter on Sheikh Muhammad Fadil Sharbiyani. Died in 1322. Okay, Miladi. Now, here. So, he has different stories, like these little, I'm not going to quote the top one, but look at this. The difference of style in between 2 ulama. He says, Shaykh Hassan Mamqani. Now this Shaykh Hassan Mamqani, he's in the chapter like right, almost not the right after one, but the one after that. So he has a whole chapter on this Hassan Mamqani as well. So he says this Hassan Mamqani, who is also, by the way, the author of a book called Tanqihul Maqal, the Rijal book, okay? Hassan Mamqani and Fazel Sharbiyani were completely opposite personalities, okay? Shaykh Hassan Mamqani was known to be the ascetic of his time. He was a Zahid, and he was the number one when it comes to asceticism. So then he says that he was such an ascetic that his sort of, the pillows on which people would sit when they would come to his house, on the ground, they put these pillows and stuff. He says these pillows, the one on the top was like a 3-star, 3-star rating, a good quality pillow, but the ones underneath them were 2 stars, and they're basically poorer quality. And he says the top pillow should be good quality because people are gonna see that. So I don't want to give a bad reputation about myself, but the pillows underneath them can be of lower quality. Okay, I don't need to show off with all of my pillows being top-notch quality. Okay, so he says it's fine. These the 2-star ones are fine, and we don't have to buy more expensive ones. But then he says the opposite. He says Fazel Sharbiyani was very aristocratic. He was very aristocratic, and he was basically not like this. So he would go and purchase all of the pillows to be 3 stars. But then he says, but both of the ulama, both of the scholars were ilahi. They were spiritual and saintly scholars. Now imagine you're reading this, right? You're understanding that, hey, you can have 2 ulama, 2 scholars who are amazing scholars, right? But one shows their asceticism in this way, but another one may show it in a different way. Correct? So isn't that what we're understanding over here? Ayatullah Zanjani is saying that one scholar like Shaykh Mamqani, he was fine with one of his pillows being expensive and the other 2 he wanted them to be poor. But Fazel Sharbiyani was, no, make all of them expensive. I want all expensive, the best quality pillows in my house. But he's saying both of them were spiritual people. Okay, so look, that means sometimes we make judgments about people, right? We say, hey, the one that has all of the expensive things, no way they can be religious and spiritual. And the one that has the lower quality stuff, definitely they're very zahid and ascetic. But Al-Zanjani is saying, hey, that's not really the criteria. Both of them were religious people. Okay. Then he has another one where he talks about the differences of opinion between the companions and students of Shaykh Mamqani and Fazel Sharbiyani. He says there was a lot of difference between their companions, their students. There was a man who would answer fiqhi questions on behalf of Ayatullah Mamqani. If anyone would ask him a question, he would question the individual about whose muqallid they are. If one would say, I am the muqallid of Mamqani, he would applaud him and answer his questions. However, if one said, I am the muqallid of Fazel Sharbiyani, he would start to refute and insult him and bring his knowledge and actions into question. So look, who is doing this? The muqallideen, the followers of the 2 scholars. And the man who would answer the question, so he's saying, so that man who would answer the questions on behalf of Ayatullah Mamqani, he had promised his daughter that he will buy a chadar for her. During that time, maybe because of maybe because of his own lack of piety, Ayatullah Mamqani himself distanced himself away from him. His monthly stipend, which he would take from Ayatullah Mamqani, was stopped. He became an outcast, and at the same time, he had not kept that kind of stance in regards to Sharbiyani. During that time, someone informed him that Fazel Sharbiyani has requested your attendance. Sharbiyani told him, how much monthly stipend did Agha Mamqani give to you? He said, a certain amount. Sharbiyani said, I will undertake this responsibility. He asked again, I heard that you have promised your daughter that you will purchase her a chadar. What is the cost of it? And then he told him the price for it. And Sharbiyani said, I'll pay for it. He gave both the money for the chadar and also told him not to be worried about his monthly stipend. He will compensate for it. However, he told him, this should not be the reason for you to change your style. Instead, you should continue on with your previous style in regards to me. Very interesting. 2013, first year Hausa, I'm reading this, and it's taking me into a world of scholarship, and I'm like, wow, these guys are next level, right? So Sharbiyani is saying, hey, I'm gonna pay for you, but don't start saying good stuff about me. Don't just start praising me just because I'm paying you. If you believe that, my arguments are weak and Ayatollah Mamqani's arguments are stronger, then you know what? Keep saying that. Keep saying whatever you believe is the truth. I'm just here to help you out with your monthly stipend because obviously Agha Mamqani has passed away, but I will take care of you. Wow. Now, as I'm saying, as I said, this is about understanding the psyche of the scholars and their different styles and their different affinities and their different behavior. Let's go into another volume. Okay, so let's go, for example, into volume 3. Now, this one's really funny. This one is in volume 3. And I'll show you why this is, kind of interesting and funny. He said, so this is in the chapter of, I believe, Ayatullah Khu'i. Yeah, it's in the chapter of Ayatullah Khu'i. Now, Ayatullah Khu'i is not that long ago, but still, there are stories within it that you will have never heard. Because Al-Ghazani was also, studied with Ayatullah Khu'i. So he has heard things with him from directly as well, and all of that, right? So he says that the people of Tehran were muqallid of Shaykh Abdul Karim Hadi. And because most of the money would come from there, they would believe that Tehran is the criteria for marji'iyya, the grand marji'iyya. Okay? Anyways, I'm skipping some of these details. He says somebody saw a dream that Agha Sayyid Abul Hasan Isfahani has lifted up his pants and is pulling water from a well, and is putting it and basically throwing the water in a pond. So this person tells the dream to one of the people, and this person who was told the dream, it is known that he would be able to interpret dreams, and he said that every time he would interpret a dream as a foreshadowing for a death, that person would actually die. So this person said, the dream interpreter said that, hey, this dream means that Shaykh Abdul Karim Hadi is going to pass away, and Sayyid Abul Hasan Isfahani is going to transfer all the funds of the Marji'iyya from Tehran to Najaf. All the funds are going to come to Najaf. This is what this dream means. He's pulling the water out from the well and throwing it in the pond. He talks about how people reacted to that. But long story short, he actually died. Okay, so Shaykh Hadi actually basically passed away. Shaykh Abdul Karim Hadi actually passed away. Then another person saw a dream about another scholar. He saw another dream in which this person, the interpreter, said that 3 of the grand marjas of Qom are going to pass away, and only Ayatollah Borujerdi will remain alive. And then exactly the same thing happened. Okay, now, by the way, it also says the date on which Ayatullah Zanjani is telling this story. On the night of the 10th of Muharram, 1434 Hijri. Okay, so almost a decade ago, he's telling the story on the night of the 10th. So not Ashura, but let's say Sham-e Ghariba, basically. He's telling the story on Sham-e Ghariba. Now, what is he saying? He says this dream interpreter, he was defeated when it came to Ayatullah Khu'i. Somebody saw a dream, and this person said that Ayatullah Khu'i is going to pass away. Now, look over here. Now, Ayatullah Khu'i was told about this. And he says that Ayatullah Khu'i got a little bit scared. Then this person's dreams are always coming true. Maybe I'm going to die next. Now, one day, Ayatullah Khu'i wanted to go for ziyarat to Karbala. And once, when he got ready to go to the garage is, I believe is referring to like a bus station of that time. He cancels his trip. So he has already left his house and he is going to the bus station or, vans, where all the vans are or the taxis are. He goes there ready to go to Karbala from Najaf, and he cancels his entire trip. And he says that, people at that time, people who were against Ayatullah Khu'i, had already popularized the fact that Ayatullah Khu'i is going to pass away this year because of the dream interpreter. But Ayatullah Khu'i, he didn't pass away in that year, and essentially the dream interpreter's interpretation was defeated. But this story, why it's interesting, is because it shows a marja is giving a possibility that he might die on this ziyarah trip to Karbala, right? An average person, you and I, are going to be so emotional and be like, no, we don't care, we're going to go Karbala, even if we die, we're going to go to Karbala. But when you're reading this, you're thinking, hey, wait, why isn't the marja thinking the same way? Why is the marja saying, hey, there's a possibility I might die, so I'm not going to go. I'm going to cancel my entire trip, ziyarah trip to Imam Hussein, because there's a possibility. And that's because somebody saw a dream. This is extremely important because you're trying to understand why is the marja. So that is, it means that the marja is prioritizing safeguarding his life, over, which he has a mere probability for. It's very little, maybe it's a very little possibility of it, but there is a possibility because all the interpretations have been coming true. So Ayatullah Khu'i gives this possibility. So he's giving a greater priority to the possibility of him losing his life over the istihbab of the ziyarah. Okay? I mean, in usul and fiqh, when we study this, it's kind of very obvious. I know, you can, as a student of usul and fiqh, you can tell very easy that is the right decision to make. But the average person might not think that way, right? And maybe in 2013, 2014, maybe I wouldn't think that way either. But when you start looking at the ulama's decision, you're like, wait, shouldn't he be sacrificing his life and, going to Karbala? Here he is, canceling his entire trip over a dream interpretation. No, because he knows what the right decision, it should be. What is the right decision to make in this time? What does Islam actually tell me to do in this time? Right? That's what he's doing. Look at this. There's also some funny stuff over here. This is Mirza Abu Talib Zanjani. Okay, Mirza Abu Talib Zanjani. He says, this is the same Mirza Abu Talib Zanjani, by the way, that I did the dictations on for the istikhara. If you go to the dictations about istikhara, and I talked about, this scholar who would do istikharas for the Qajar king and whatnot, this is the same one. Now he says something, so look at this story. He says, Agha Mirza Abu Talib Zanjani said to another scholar. Now Ayatollah Zanjani says, I know his name, but I'm not going to say his name. Okay, so he doesn't say his name. He said to him that I consider you to be like Hazrat Abul Fadl, right? Like Hazrat Abbas. I consider you to be like Hazrat Abbas. So this Shaykh would become very happy, thank you. I'm very happy that you are comparing me to him. It's a big merit. So somebody said to Mirza Abu Talib that from which perspective are you calling him similar to Abul Fadl? What is so, which angle of his do you feel that it's so special? So he said, just like Hazrat Abul Fadl went to the Sharia of the Furat, he went to the Furat and he came back with thirsty lips. You also went to the Hawza of Qom and you did not drink a single drop of knowledge and basically returned back and came back. So, what you're seeing here is a scholar, trolling. He's trolling, is being a little bit, joking a little bit, being a little bit of a comedian. And there are tons and tons of stories like this, where some ulama are cracking a joke, they're trolling somebody, they're messing. There's one story of a scholar where he slaps someone in the hawza. He slaps him. And later on, we figure out that that person who was slapped was a spy, right? And that marja had figured out that this guy is a spy. He's trying to create problems in the hawza. So that marja literally slapped him on the face in front of the whole crowd, and people got really upset. Later on, they figured out he was a spy by the government who was sent in to infiltrate the hawza, and they discovered that plan of his, right? So on the one hand, you have these really funny stories. On the other hand, you have these stories where ulama are like, they're gonna slap your face if they figure out you're a spy or an agent. Two, Ayatullah Khu'i making certain decisions, or two ulama having their differences of opinion and then solving it. So let me show you another very interesting story. And this is a story of, this is the story of Shaykh Hadi Tehrani. And I was introduced to this scholar through this book, through Jurayee Az Darya. I had never heard of this scholar before that. And this story is called, this is in 1321 Miladi. 1321 Miladi. Okay, so that is around late 19th century. Now, here is, there's a whole background to who Shaykh Hadi Tehrani was and whatnot, but I want to just quote this story where he says, kiss the hands of Shaykh Hadi. Kiss the hands of Shaykh Hadi. He says, Sayyid Zanjani is quoting, from someone and so on. I'm not quoting the chain of transmitters. He says that, I took the advice of your uncle in regards to doing taqleed, and I would do taqleed of Shaykh Hadi Tehrani. However, I heard things about him due to which I had doubts about him. So, sorry, just, I think maybe one point is important to mention. Shaykh Hadi Tehrani was firstly, he was a student of Shaykh Ansari, but then later he became a severe opponent of Shaykh Ansari. Okay, and one of the other students of Shaykh Ansari, Mirza Habibullah, they had Mirza Habibullah Rashti and Shaykh Hadi Tehrani had a lot of conflicts with each other, basically. Okay, because Shaykh Hadi was also a student, but he became an opponent of Shaykh Ansari. But Shaykh Mirza Habibullah Rashti was a supporter of Shaykh Ansari. So that's kind of the story here. So this person says that, however, I heard things about Shaykh Hadi Tehrani due to which I had doubts about him. Around those days, thanks to Allah, my uncertainty was resolved. This is what happened. In a dream, I saw that I was walking towards the shrine of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Near the gate of Najaf, I saw that a few horse riders were coming towards me. In the front was Imam Ali, and behind him was Shaykh Hadi Tehrani, and behind him was Mirza Habibullah Rashti. During those days, there was an ideological dispute between Shaykh Hadi and Mirza Habibullah. I decided to go near Imam Ali and kiss his hands, when suddenly my servant woke up from the dream. While upset and regretful over the incomplete dream, I slept again. The dream repeated itself, and this time Allah gave me the opportunity to kiss his hands again, basically Imam Ali's hands. Imam Ali then ordered me to kiss the hands of Shaykh Hadi. So I also kissed the hands of Shaykh Hadi. Shaykh Hadi then asked me to kiss the hands of Mirza Habibullah. I obeyed him and also kissed his hands. From this order of Imam Ali, the person who saw the dream, he said, I made this conclusion that their ideological difference between these two great scholars was never due to their hawa and hawas, their desires. It was never due to these personal desires and ego. Rather, it was upon what they considered to be proof upon them according to their reasoning. So in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are both excused and deserving of reward, and respecting them both is incumbent and necessary. Okay. Once again, this is a story I read very early on in the Hawza, and it took me into this idea of, we're going to have severe differences of opinions among scholars and ulama and among students, but if you are sincere, then you're going to keep it to that extent. Okay, you're going to keep it to an academic difference of opinion. Unfortunately, though, it seems a lot of people just cannot understand that. Because people are emotional, most people are emotional. Most people just cannot understand that you can have an academic difference of opinion with someone and, just leave it at that. People resort to takfir and slander and bad mouthing and spreading rumors and gossip, and unfortunately that's how most people are. That's how insan is, right? And that is also true in the story of Shaykh Hadi and Mirza Habibullah. Same thing was happening over there. Amongst their companions and followers, people were spreading rumors and lies to the extent where Shaykh Hadi Tehrani would have to give classes secretly in Najaf, in the Haram of Imam Ali. He would have to give classes in secret. He would cover his head with his abba and cover his face, and then he only had a few students left who would come to his class. Most of them were too scared to go join his classes, because people are just kind of ready to attribute you to this scholar and that scholar and bad name you. Unfortunately, the same stuff happens until today in all of these academic circles and amongst scholarship. And most of the times it's not amongst the actual ulama, it is amongst the muqallideen and the people and the followers. And this is the problem in the followers, right? That's what people do. When you become a follower of someone, you turn your person that you are following sort of like an idol, where they can never make a mistake and they can never be wrong. And this is that humility disappears. So look at this other story that Sayyid Zanjani is quoting. The title of this story is Abu Dhar has been killed oppressed. He says Shaykh Hadi Tehrani was one of the great scholars of Najaf in his time. Many famous, unorthodox opinions of his became the reason for his isolation near the end of his life. This was to such an extent that his ablution, shrouding, and burial was like that of a stranger. So when he passed away, nobody even wanted to go to his janazah, with a few handful of people participating in it. He passed away in the year 1321 Hijri. Sayyid Ibrahim Alawi Makbarai Khu'i narrated from his uncle or from his father-in-law that Shaykh Hadi passed away on that hot scorching day. A few of us took his body to a locality outside of Najaf called Sherri, which is a little river, and became busy with his ghusl and so on. Meanwhile, we all became extremely surprised when we saw the pious scholar Shaykh Ismail Qurrebaghi. So this Shaykh Ismail Qurrebaghi, Sayyid Zanjani also has a chapter on this guy, right? Who was one of the greatest scholars of the time in Najaf, coming and joining us for the janazah. The extreme heat and the state that the funeral procession of Shaykh Hadi was being carried out provoked us to ask him about the reason for his presence. Ayatullah Shaykh Ismail, the one who's quoting the story, said, Shaykh Ismail is Qurrebaghi, the one who, the pious scholar of Najaf who came to the janazah. He says, I was sleeping an hour ago, and in my dream, I was informed that Lady Fatima Salamullah alayha is present in the shrine of Imam Ali alayhi salam, sitting on the pulpit. I quickly got myself there, and I heard her say, Qutila Abu Dhar mazluma. Abu Dhar has been killed oppressed. I woke up from my dream very confused. I asked around whether anyone had passed away, and then I was told that Shaykh Hadi Tehran has passed away. Afterwards, Shaykh Ismail Qurrebaghi himself led the janazah prayers of Shaykh Hadi. So he himself led the janazah prayer. Okay. This is of somebody who everybody used to hate in the Hawza, and nobody even wanted to attend his janazah. Eventually, one of the greatest scholars of Najaf attended the janazah, and in fact, he led the janazah himself. These type of stories, this is not the only story that is like this. There's multiple stories we hear. Sometimes a scholar is isolated and cut off, and then later on people regret it. But the funny thing is, nobody ever learns. Nobody ever learns that, hey, maybe later on we might regret slandering somebody. Maybe we might regret it later on, and doing tuhmat and slander and doing takfir and excommunicating someone just because they have differences of opinions and so on. Anyways, this is, as I said, these are the kind of things that immediately had an impact on the way I was going to pursue my Hawza studies, right? Everyone, all the ulama, all the scholars in Qom were there for us to benefit from. Everyone's going to have, people are going to have different opinions, different styles, different political reasons, and different political agendas, and different theologies, different, everything. You are there to study, and you are there eventually to formulate your own understanding of things, formulate your own scholarship, right? You're not going to be stuck and attached to one guy for the rest of your life. Well, that's not really scholarship. You're just a sheep at that point. And then, but unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do. That's what a lot of people do. But if they read a book like this very early on, and they kind of take the lives of the ulama, as we said, Siratul Mutashari'ah. Well, this is Siratul Mutashari'ah. This is the seerah of the religious, pious people, the religious people. And look at how they were, look at how they behaved. And you learn from their lives and their lessons. Inshallah, you can be a much better person. And your understanding of Islam will be, firstly, not so robotic at times. it will be a lot more nuanced. You will know that there is flexibility in things. You will know you have to have take into consideration maslaha and expediency of things at times. You will realize that, hey, it's okay to be funny as a religious person. It's okay to troll around sometimes. It is okay to have things which are expensive. All sorts of stuff, right? All sorts of stuff. And then there are ulama who are completely, not interested in anything. Okay, yeah, that's also perfectly fine. It's not one or the other way. Both ways are perfectly fine, and these personalities can be reconciled in the Islamic tradition as a Muslim, and they're both religious people, right? So this is the kind of literature that is I feel very important, and unfortunately books like these are not translated, right? It takes a long time to translate them, but I don't know why no one wants to invest time in translating these type of books. The ones that are actually reliable, the ulama, Sayyid Zanjani is the one quoting these stories. They are reliable, they are trustworthy, right? I translated about 6, 8. How many did I translate? 3, 6, 9, around 12 stories. Back in 2014, 2015. But obviously, I didn't have time to do the whole 4 volumes. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of funds, and it's hard to do it for free all the time. Most of my stuff I know has been free for the last decade, all of my articles and stuff. But to have that level of consistency, there has to be a proper team and a project around works like these. But unfortunately, they are not translated. If a work like this is translated, I'm not talking about the first section of the book where it's all technical. The second section, which talks about the lives of the ulama, you're gonna give people a treasure, essentially. Okay, you're gonna make them connect with the ulama. You're gonna make them understand that ulama are people just like them. They went through different struggles and hardships and troubles, and troubles inside their homes, sometimes in their families. The political stories that are in this book, there's so many political stories. Ayatullah Borujerdi's stance against the Shah, and Hadi Yazdi, and what did he think, and what did the Qajar era look like, and what does the Safavid era look like, what did Shaykh al-Amili do, what did Muhakkik Karaki do with the politics. There's political stuff as well. Once again, it's to increase and expand your understanding of the overall tradition, and in this case particularly the Shi'i scholarly tradition, right? The Shia scholarly tradition is extremely beneficial, this type of a book. So anyways, I just wanted to share and talk about this book a little bit. As I said, it's 4 volumes. There's too many stories to quote. I just quoted very few, very few. There's so many other ones that I wish I could quote. There's one about the attack by the Wahhabis on Karbala in the 19th century. They attacked Karbala and how Sayyid Ali Tabatabai was saved and so on. There's a lot, as I said, there's a lot of interesting stories in this book. But inshallah, maybe in a later episode, I will speak about a couple other books. Other books are not as easy as this one. For example, this one was mostly stories. I'm reading them and I'm thinking about them, reflecting on these stories. But some of the later books are going to be actual scholarly works. For example, a book called Narrated Sunnah, very important book by Shaykh Haidar Hubbullah, that really changed my understanding of the scholarly tradition, the Hadith sciences. Or for example, another book called Sayyid Mafhum Ilm Dar Tamaddun Islami by Rasul Ja'fariyan. The sort of changes in the concept of knowledge, of ilm, the concept of knowledge. What does knowledge even mean? Changes in the concept and definition of ilm in Islamic civilization from the beginning till the end. What did ilm mean for different scholars in different centuries? That has been a life-changing book, and a couple other books as well, which inshallah I plan to give a summary of these books inshallah soon. Anyways, that's all for today. That's all I wanted to talk about today. Some of them I might do for the members only. So if you have not yet become a member, please definitely do check it out. I am releasing at least minimum 2 videos per month for the members. I've just released one on gender interactions, and inshallah I will release a couple more as well. Until then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please do leave any comments. If you have any questions, clarifications that are required, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll see you all in a future episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.